Hi, my name's Scott Robertson, and I'm going to show you the way I like to build a basic palette to render some of my sketches. So first thing I always do is train your palettes, bring in your sketches, connect some prompt blocks. Pretty much a very simple workbench, 2 palettes, a couple of sketches, and then let's jump into the prompt block. And you'll see I usually start on render mode, and then flying ships was the trained palette, local palette. And then what I like to do is I like to run a range of influences across the top. Vizcom automatically makes 4 wide, and then it jumps to the next row below. So I usually just limit it to 4. So I'll go like 100, 80, 60, 40. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to bookend and learn about the power of your palette and how much is too far, meaning is it getting too far away from your initial sketch, or is it also losing your sketch? So it's a balancing act always. And so I like to set the limits and learn where's the sweet spot. So for instance, let's look at this little flying vehicle here. So if I zoom in and I look at this sketch, it's quite odd. It's unlike the flying ships where I trained my palette. So the expectation of being able to render that without these other ships starting to influence the shape of it is pretty unlikely. And so let's have a look and see what happened. So let's go over here. And these are 100, 80, 60, 40. And what you'll see is that 100, it kind of works, right? I'm starting to get something. And don't worry that it's a loose rendering at this point. This is not the final output. This is just our very first cut. Let's call it a block-in set to render mode. And then you see as I turn down the influence, I get a couple of nice, interesting areas. Maybe I'll integrate those together later. But then when I get down here to the lower influence, now I've lost it altogether. It's adding another ship. It's no longer got the wings, right? It's completely changed. So that would be an example of using influence and setting your limits. And if you don't like them, no big deal. It didn't cost you much. Just go and delete those. Okay, let's look at a couple more. So I have a couple of sketches here. These are a landed ship and a slightly hovering ship, but we can see the ground. So I use the other palette for these, using the landed ships, set to render mode, again, influence. That's all I'm changing. And I'm just running across my progression, probably 100, 80, 60, 40. And you'll notice here that, yes, this does look like the initial sketch for the first 2, even the third one. It's starting to change the landing gear a little bit, but generally has the same feel of the sketch. I'd say those are all pretty successful, but this one, not so much. So again, learn my limits, but maybe it has some elements you want to keep. Look at the one below, the hovering one. Nope, see, it's starting to try and add landing gear. And that makes sense because my palette was trained on ships, except for one hovering in the middle here. They all have landing gear. Keep in mind what you put in your palette is what comes out and influences your rendering. So here I engineered the bias to be landed ships. And that's my basic beginning of how to use palettes. So let's leave this one. Let's go look at something a little bit more interesting. Okay, now I'm going to move into a different workbench and show you what I've been experimenting with a bit more. And that's the idea of creating multiple sketches per image. And this is like a crazy force multiplier, okay? Because if Vizcom was already powerful at just taking one sketch, one line drawing and rendering it, this is now going to take pages like this, right, where I've got multiple sketches. And the goal is to render images or output images with sketch variations for me. And so the way I'm going to use palettes to do that is that I'm going to import these sketches. So here is my first sketch palette. That's what I trained. And it's full of those multi-page or multi-images per page sketches. And I would call this kind of my thumbnail palette, let's say. And so you see some are very loose, line drawing, some a little bit of marker, some a little bit of value. But point being is that there are multiple sketches per image. So my expectation is if I use that in the form of a palette, we should be able to generate images that have multiple sketches. So let's see if it works. Now I just need a placeholder image here. So I'm going to start with this sketch that I brought in. That's an original sketch, scanned it, brought it into the workbench, and you can actually put it at 0 influence, which just means I'm using it for the proportion. But let's see what we can get. I'm using the auto-generated text prompt that came when I picked the Sketches palette. Remember, Vizcom will auto-generate that description for you. I modified it a little bit by adding full page of spaceship sketches because it didn't come up with that when it auto-generated. So remember, you can always edit the text and steer it in the direction you want. So look at this. This is ridiculous. I mean, come on. I'm getting multiple sketches per image. And if we zoom in, we're going to see that they're all slightly different, right? And don't worry about the losers. You just delete those out, right? You just go into the studio and grab a white paintbrush and just paint out the ones you don't want. But point being, this represents like 15 minutes worth of work. That's just not right. So it's mind-boggling, actually. We have our render model is our initial local palette that we trained called Sketches. That's just the black and white sketches we just looked at. We're going to put the sketch influence of this sketch at 0. And all it's going to use is the proportion of that, and it's not actually going to use the layout or any of those designs. And let's see what we get. I'm going to hit it 4 times. You see them generating down here at the bottom, all 4. And there we go. And you'll see that they resemble the sketches they were trained on, which is just awesome. I mean, come on, there's something cool in there, right? Oh, then this one, it's just like it becomes a little bit of image overload, right? And this now you have to put on your curating hat and your editing hat. So I run a whole bunch of sketches. Then, once I have a sketch block, I move on to render. Now in this case, for rendering, this is my group of sketches that I chose. Some of these, all of these look like they've been, are variations of previous Vizcom rendering output based on my work as well. So these are kind of like one step into the AI world in that they were generated using my own palettes before. So they're like the output of a session now getting used as a new palette. So these are the sketches I imported. Here is my trained palette. It's just those 8 sketches. And then let's see what it does for us over here on this one. Same prompt actually, except I changed monochromatic to colorful. So we get a little bit more color in them, but not much. See a bit more down here. I probably ran these with the old prompt. These have that new colorful prompt. But you can see I'm getting very usable thumbnail sketches. Pretty cool. Thank you very much for riding along with me with the behind the scenes, looking at some of my workbenches. I hope this gives you a great overview of the capabilities of palettes inside Vizcom AI. Jump in, break it, play with it, have fun, inspire yourself, and sort of realize the superpowers you have within your own work.